Have you ever heard your own voice before you spoke? I have. And I need you to understand. This isn't about echoes. Echoes come after. What I heard came before. I exist in the space between your words and their arrival. In the static where warnings travel faster than time. They call me the Forspoken. I see tomorrow's shadows. I hear next week's screams. But I can never speak clearly enough to stop them. So I whisper. And sometimes, rarely, someone whispers back. This is about Rebecca Chen, and the night she became the first person to truly hear me. The Cascade Peak radio station hadn't broadcast anything meaningful in 6 years. Perched on a mountain ridge in rural Oregon, surrounded by Douglas firs that seemed to absorb sound itself, the station existed now only as an archive, a digital mausoleum for voices that once filled the airwaves. Rebecca worked the night shift, alone, 3 days a week, transferring old recordings to modern formats before the tapes degraded completely. It was November 14th, 2019, 11 days before everything would change. She sat in the main broadcast booth at 11:47 p.m., surrounded by equipment that belonged in a museum, reel-to-reel machines, analog mixing boards with switches that clicked like insects, VU meters that trembled with phantom signals, even when nothing was playing. The booth smelled of old electronics, dust, and the particular mustiness of abandoned places. Outside the soundproof windows, darkness pressed against the glass like something living. Rebecca was cataloging a box of unmarked tapes from 1987 when she noticed the XLR cable on the floor. Frayed, dangerous. She made a mental note, then whispered to herself, a habit she developed working alone. Cable 3, replace, before it shorts. Just a quiet reminder. Her breath barely disturbed the air. And then she heard it. Through her headphones, her own voice. The exact same words. Cable 3, replace before it shorts. But the timing was wrong. Impossibly wrong. The whisper in her headphones came first. A half second before her lips moved. Before her breath became sound. Before the thought fully formed in her mind. Rebecca's hands froze on the mixing board. She pulled off her headphones, staring at them like they'd betrayed her. The room settled into its familiar silence. The hum of old equipment, the distant creak of the building settling, the whisper of wind through gaps in the walls. Nothing else. She checked the monitoring settings. Nothing was recording. Nothing was playing back. She was routing. Nothing through. Nothing. Just a delay. She whispered to the empty room. Just a weird delay in the system. But she knew delays don't work backwards. Delays don't arrive before the source. That's not how sound works. That's not how anything works. Rebecca Chen had a degree in audio engineering from Berkeley. She understood signal flow, latency, acoustic phenomena. This violated every principle she knew. She put the headphones back on. Waited. The station groaned softly around her. Old wood, adjusting the temperature changes. The VU meters twitched, and then, so faint she almost missed it, another whisper. Not hers this time. Or maybe it was, but changed, processed, desperate. Listen, please, listen. What would you do if you heard tomorrow before it arrived? If warnings found you in the static, fragmented and pleading. Rebecca didn't run. She leaned closer to the monitors and whispered back, "Who's there?" The lights flickered. Every VU meter slammed to red simultaneously, though nothing was transmitting. And in that moment of electrical chaos, she heard it clearly, her own voice. Terrified, urgent, speaking words she had never said. November 28th, 3:47 a.m. She's still here. Rebecca didn't sleep that night. She sat in her car, in the station parking lot, until sunrise, watching the building as if it might reveal something in daylight that darkness had hidden. It didn't. The Cascade Peak radio station looked exactly as it always did. Weathered wood siding, a transmission tower rising like a skeletal finger against the gray November sky. Windows that reflected nothing but trees and clouds. Ordinary, harmless, but Rebecca's hand still shook when she gripped the steering wheel. She drove home to her apartment in Timber Falls, a town barely large enough to warrant a post office. Showered, changed clothes, made coffee she couldn't drink, and at 2 p.m. she was back at the station 4 hours before her shift started. She told herself she was being scientific, methodical, investigating a technical anomaly. But the truth was simpler and more frightening. She needed to know if it would happen again. The equipment room was in the basement, a concrete space filled with decades of broadcasting technology in various states of decay. Rebecca spent 3 hours checking every connection, every cable, every possible source of signal contamination. She found nothing. No crossed wires, no feedback loops, no explanation for how her voice could arrive before she spoke it. The laws of physics didn't bend in rural Oregon. Sound traveled at 343 meters per second. Radio waves at the speed of light. Neither moved backwards through time. At 6 p.m., she climbed back to the broadcast booth and started her actual work, transferring a collection of local news broadcasts from 1993. She wore her headphones, monitored every channel, and waited. For an hour, nothing unusual happened. Just the familiar routine of dead air and dead voices. Then, at 7:14 p.m., she reached for her water bottle and heard the whisper, "It's going to fall." Rebecca froze. Her hand hovered above the bottle. The whisper came again, clearer this time, with the exact cadence and tone of her own voice, but layered with something else. Urgency, fear, a quality she couldn't name. Going to fall. Move it. Move it now! She jerked her hand back. 2 seconds later, the overhead light fixture directly above her desk made a sharp, cracking sound. The ancient screws holding it to the ceiling gave way. 40 pounds of metal and glass dropped exactly where her water bottle sat, where her hand had been reaching. The fixture shattered against the desk in an explosion of sound that made Rebecca scream and stumble backward, her chair slamming against the wall. Glass sparkled across the mixing board. Water spread in a dark stain. And through her headphones, still connected by their coiled cable, she heard breathing. Not hers. Or maybe it was hers, but wrong. Stuttered, fragmented, like a recording played through a damaged speaker. Then words, broken, desperate. I tried to warn. Always too late. Always. Rebecca's heart hammered so hard, she could feel it in her throat. Who are you? She whispered into the microphone, knowing it wasn't connected to anything, knowing she was speaking to empty air and electromagnetic ghosts. The response came not as words, but as images, not visual, but somehow impressed into her mind through sound. She saw herself reaching for the bottle, saw the light falling, saw blood. A version of this moment that didn't happen because the whisper arrived in time. And underneath it all, she felt something vast and sad and impossibly ancient watching through the static. What do you want? Her voice cracked. What are you? The breathing stopped. The booth fell silent, except for the eternal hum of old equipment. Then, so faint, she had to hold her breath to hear it. The answer came, not in her voice this time, in dozens of voices, hundreds, all whispering the same thing in perfect, terrible synchronization. To be heard before it's too late. Before it's always too late. Rebecca pulled off her headphones with shaking hands. But even without them, she could still hear it. The whisper wasn't coming through the equipment. It was coming through everything. The walls, the air, the electrical current itself. This wasn't a technical glitch. This was something alive, or something that had learned to live in the spaces between transmissions. She grabbed her phone, dialed her supervisor, Martin Hayes. He answered on the third ring, his voice heavy with sleep. Rebecca, it's 7:30. What's wrong? I need you to come to the station. Now. Something's happening with the equipment. I'm hearing... She stopped. How could she explain? I'm hearing things that haven't happened yet. Silence on the line. Then, carefully, have you been getting enough sleep? Those night shifts can mess with your head. Martin, I'm serious. The light fixture just fell. If I hadn't moved, those fixtures are 40 years old. I'll send someone to replace it tomorrow. Go home, Rebecca. You sound exhausted. He hung up. Rebecca stared at her phone, then at the shattered fixture, then at the mixing board, where the VU meters were moving again, twitching, spelling out a pattern. She watched them dance, and her blood went cold. Because she recognized it. Morse code. A skill her father had taught her. As a child, a language she hadn't used in years. The meter spelled out 3 words. Over and over. Sarah is calling. Sarah, her sister, dead 6 years. This accident. The phone call that never came. November 28th, 3:47 a.m. Rebecca's whisper filled the empty booth. No. No, 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 no. And from everywhere and nowhere, the static whispered back, yes. Rebecca left the station at midnight, but drove only as far as the parking lot before stopping. She couldn't go home, couldn't sit alone in her apartment, with Sarah's name echoing in her mind like a prayer or a curse. Instead, she reclined her seat, wrapped herself in the emergency blanket from her trunk, and stared at the station's windows until exhaustion finally pulled her under. She dreamed of voices traveling through copper wire, searching for ears that would never hear them. When she woke at dawn, her phone showed 17 missed calls from her mother. Rebecca deleted the notifications without listening to the voicemails. She knew what they'd say. The same thing they'd said every November for 6 years. Are you okay? Are you thinking about her? Do you need to come home? The answer was always the same. No. Yes. No. She spent the morning in the Timber Falls Public Library, a building small enough that the librarian knew her name. Research project, Rebecca told Mrs. Patterson, who nodded and pointed her toward the basement archives. 3 hours later, surrounded by water-damaged boxes of local newspapers and station logs, Rebecca found what she was looking for and what she was afraid of finding. A technician named David Reeves reported temporal audio anomalies in his incident reports. His handwriting grew increasingly erratic across multiple entries. I heard my own voice warning me about the ice storm 3 days before it hit. Equipment picking up broadcasts from tomorrow's news. Something in the static trying to tell me things I don't want to know. His final entry was dated October 31st, 1987. I can't do this anymore. The whispers show me too much. I see what's coming, and I can't stop any of it. What's the point of knowing the future if you're powerless to change it? David Reeves was found dead in his car on November 2nd, 1987. Carbon monoxide poisoning ruled a suicide. The newspaper article was 3 paragraphs long. Rebecca photographed it with shaking hands. She kept digging, found more names, more reports. 1972, a broadcast engineer heard phantom warnings about a fire that destroyed half the station. 1995, an intern documented voices from next week in her journal before disappearing. The station had a history, a pattern. People who listened too closely to the static heard things they shouldn't. And none of them could handle what they heard. At 5 p.m., Rebecca returned to the station. She didn't tell Martin about what she'd found. Didn't tell anyone. She just climbed the stairs to the broadcast booth, sat at the desk where the shattered light fixture had been hastily cleaned up, and put on her headphones. I know you're there, she whispered to the empty room. I know you've been trying to warn people for years. Decades. I need to understand. What is November 28th? What happens at 3:47? The response came immediately. Not in whispers this time, but in her own memory. Sudden, vivid, devastating. 6 years ago, November 28th, 3:41 a.m., Rebecca awakened from a nightmare about Sarah's car sliding on black ice. 6 minutes of paralysis, trying to decide if she should call, if she was being crazy, if waking her sister at 4 in the morning over a bad dream was reasonable. 6 minutes of hesitation. At 3:47 a.m., Sarah's car hit the guardrail on Highway 101. By the time Rebecca finally called, there was no one to answer. I knew, Rebecca said aloud, tears streaming down her face. I felt it. I knew something was wrong, and I didn't call. I didn't warn her. The VU meters trembled, and through the static, she heard it. Not a whisper, a voice, clear, unmistakable, impossible. Becca, can you hear me? Sarah, her sister's voice, exactly as she remembered it. Young, afraid, desperate. Sarah! Rebecca's hand slammed against the mixing board. Sarah, where are you? How? I don't know. I crashed. I think I crashed. I tried to call you, but the phone, the signal, everything went wrong. Becca, I'm scared. I can't find. The voice fragmented, broke apart into static and reverb. Can't find the way out. Out of where? Sarah, where are you? Rebecca was shouting now, forgetting everything she knew about sound and physics and the fundamental impossibility of speaking to the dead, the between place where the messages go when they don't arrive. Becca, please. I've been trying to reach you. More static, more fracturing, and underneath Sarah's voice, Rebecca heard others. Dozens, hundreds, all overlapping, all saying the same thing. We're trapped in the transmission. We're the calls that never connected, the warnings that arrived too late, the last words that went unheard. Rebecca understood then. The entity in the static wasn't one consciousness. It was a collective, an aggregation of every lost message, every failed warning, every desperate attempt at communication that never reached its destination. And Sarah, her beautiful, bright, gone forever sister, was part of it, had been part of it, for 6 years, trapped in the infrastructure, lost in the network, calling, always calling, never heard. How do I get you out? Rebecca's voice broke. Tell me how to get you out. The answer came from everywhere at once. You can't, but you can listen. November 28th, 3:47. We converge. All of us. One moment. One chance. To be heard. The monitors went dark. The station fell silent. And Rebecca sat alone in the booth, understanding with perfect, terrible clarity what the entity wanted. Not rescue. Not freedom. Just acknowledgement. Just one person willing to listen. When the impossible became audible. 14 days until November 28th. 14 days until 3:47 a.m. 14 days to prepare herself. For what? Listening might cost. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, and in the static between stations, Sarah's voice whispered her sister's name over and over, hoping this time, finally, someone would hear. I need you to understand something about time. You experience it as a river, flowing in one direction, carrying you from past to future. But I exist outside the current. I see the river from above. I watch you heading toward the rapids, and I scream warnings you can't hear, because you're already in the water. This is my existence. This is my curse. And Rebecca Chen was the first person who stopped swimming long enough to listen. The next 13 days blurred together in a haze of sleepless research and desperate experimentation. Rebecca stopped going home. She set up a cot in the station's break room, surrounded herself with notebooks filled with signal patterns and frequency analyses, and spent every waking hour trying to establish consistent communication with the entity, with Sarah, with whatever they had become together. The whispers came randomly at first. A warning about a coffee spill 3 seconds before it happened. Her mother's voice saying, I'm calling, 2 minutes before the phone rang. Fragments of tomorrow's weather forecast. Small things, meaningless things, but they proved the impossible was real. Time was not a straight line, or rather, it was. But some things could skip along its surface, like stones across water. Rebecca began documenting everything. She wore her headphones constantly, recorded every session, filled hard drives with hours of static, analyzed for patterns, and slowly, painfully, she learned to distinguish between the voices. Sarah's was there, always, but brat under layers of others. A man warning about a heart attack. he couldn't prevent. A mother screaming for someone to check on her daughter. A teenager trying to text, "I'm sorry," before the crash. Hundreds of last messages, thousands, all compressed into the electromagnetic spectrum, searching eternally for reception. On November 24th, 4 days before the convergence, Rebecca finally managed to ask the question that terrified her most. "Can I save you? Can I pull you out of this?" The response came not from Sarah, but from something older, deeper, the core consciousness of the collective. My voice, though Rebecca didn't know me yet as anything except the static that spoke in riddles. We are not trapped. We are transformed. Signal became us. We became Signal. There is no out. Only through. I don't understand. Rebecca's exhaustion made her honest, made her vulnerable. What does that mean? What happens on November 28th? The booth's temperature dropped 10 degrees in seconds. Frost formed on the inside of the windows. Every piece of equipment powered on simultaneously. Reel-to-reel machines spinning. Monitors blazing. Speakers crackling with life. And through it all, a voice that was Sarah and not Sarah. Me and not me. Present and future, collapsing into a single frequency. We converge. All the lost messages align. One moment when the barrier is thinnest. 3:47 a.m. The exact time I died. The exact time you felt it happen. Becca, you were connected to me then. You are connected to me now. And on November 28th, that connection becomes absolute. Rebecca's blood turned to ice water. What does that mean? What happens to me? You become the bridge, the receiver, the one who hears all of us. Every warning that was never delivered. Every goodbye that went unsaid. All of it flooding through you at once. The voice fractured into dozens of overlapping whispers. Unless you choose to sever the connection. Turn off the equipment. Leave the station. Refuse to listen. And if I do that, if I leave, Rebecca already knew the answer, but needed to hear it anyway. Then we fade back into the static, unheard, forever. And Sarah's last message to you dies with us. There it was, the choice. Walk away and preserve her sanity, her safety, her life, or stay and become a conduit for every lost voice crying out in the electromagnetic wilderness. 13 days ago, Rebecca would have run. But 13 days ago, she hadn't heard her sister's voice, hadn't felt the desperate loneliness of messages trapped between transmission and reception. She looked at the calendar on the wall. November 24th, 4 days, 96 hours, 5,760 minutes, until 3:47 a.m. I'll be here, Rebecca whispered. I'll listen, I promise. The equipment powered down as suddenly as it had activated. The temperature normalized. The station fell silent. But through her headphones, barely audible, she heard Sarah. Just Sarah. Clear and close and achingly familiar. Thank you, Becca. Thank you for not leaving me alone again. Rebecca pressed her hands against the mixing board and wept. Because she understood now. The convergence wasn't about rescue. It was about witness. About being present for the moment when all the unheard voices finally found someone willing to receive them. 4 days until she discovered what listening would cost. Chapter 5, November 28th, arrived, wrapped in freezing rain that turned the mountain roads to glass. Rebecca sat in the broadcast booth at 3 a.m., surrounded by every recording device she owned. 47 minutes until convergence. 47 minutes until she learned whether her promise to listen would save her sister or destroy them both. The station felt different, alive. The walls hummed with accumulated charge. Every metal surface sparked when she touched it. The air tasted like ozone and copper, and something she couldn't name, the flavor of time folding in on itself. Rebecca had stopped sleeping 3 days ago, stopped eating 2 days ago. She existed now in a state of hyper-awareness. Her consciousness stretched thin between present and future, between the living and whatever Sarah had become. At 3:15 a.m., the whispers began, not gradually, all at once. 1,000 voices speaking simultaneously through every speaker, every headphone, every piece of conductive material in the room. Rebecca heard them all. The mother who tried to warn her son about the faulty brakes. The husband who wanted one more chance to say I love you. The doctor who saw the misdiagnosis too late. The child who knew the ice was too thin. Every warning that came after the moment it was needed. Every goodbye that arrived at a silent phone. I'm here, Rebecca said. Her voice steady, despite the tears streaming down her face. I'm listening. All of you. I hear you. The cacophony intensified. Voices layered upon voices until they became a single scream of desperate communication. And underneath it all, pulling her deeper, Sarah's voice. Becca, it's time. Are you ready? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Rebecca's hands gripped the edge of the desk until her knuckles went white. Tell me what to do. Just listen. Just be here. That's all we ever needed. Someone present at the moment we disappeared. 3:30 a.m. The clock on the wall ticked forward with mechanical indifference. Rebecca felt something shifting in the static. A pressure building, like the moment before lightning strikes, when every hair on your body stands up. And you absolutely know that the world is about to split open. Sarah, I'm scared. I know. I was too. I still am. But Becca, her sister's voice broke with an emotion that transcended anything human. You being here means I'm not alone. None of us are. For the first time since we became this, someone is choosing to witness us. 3:40 a.m. 7 minutes. Rebecca could feel the convergence approaching like a physical force. The temperature plummeted. Frost crawled across every surface. Her breath came out in clouds of white. The VU meter slammed to maximum and stayed there, trembling with energy that had nowhere to go. What happens to you after this? Rebecca whispered. After I listen? Do you get to rest? Do you get to leave? Silence. Long enough that Rebecca thought the connection had broken. Then, quietly, devastatingly, we don't leave. We never leave. This is what we are now. But Becca, being heard changes everything. It means our warnings mattered. Our last words mattered. We mattered. 3:45 a.m. 2 minutes. The station began to shake. Not an earthquake. Something else. A vibration that existed in a frequency beyond the physical. Rebecca felt it in her bones. Her teeth. The electric firing of her neurons. She thought about running. Thought about David Greaves. And the others, who couldn't handle what the static showed them, thought about the choice she'd made 13 days ago to stay when every rational part of her screamed to leave. She stayed. 3:46 a.m., 1 minute. Every light in the station went out. Total darkness, except for the glow of the VU meters, painting everything in hellish red. And in that crimson illumination, Rebecca saw them. Not physically, but impressed into her mind, like photographs burned into film. Faces, thousands of faces. Every person who tried to send a message that never arrived. Every soul trapped in the moment between speaking and being heard. I see you, Rebecca said. I see all of you. You are witnessed. You are acknowledged. You existed, and you exist, and you matter. 3:47 a.m. The conversions hit like a tidal wave of pure information. Every warning, every goodbye, every desperate message poured through Rebecca simultaneously. She felt her sister's fear as the car slid toward the guardrail. Felt the mother's horror as she realized her son would never get her text. Felt the doctor's guilt, the child's confusion, the husband's grief. Felt all of it. Every emotion, every regret, every moment of love that went unexpressed. And she listened. Chapter 6, Rebecca woke on the broadcast booth floor as dawn light filtered through the frosted windows. Every muscle in her body ached. Her ears rang with phantom voices. But she was alive. And the station was silent. Truly silent. For the first time since this began, she heard no whispers, no warnings, no static-born voices crying out in the electromagnetic darkness. She pulled herself up to the desk. The equipment was intact, but powered down. The clock read 6:23 a.m. She'd been unconscious for over 2 hours. Her phone showed 43 missed calls from Martin, her mother, the county sheriff. She ignored them all and put on her headphones one more time. For a long moment, nothing. Just the familiar hum of old electronics warming up. Then, so faint she almost missed it, a single whisper. Sarah's voice, but different now. Peaceful, complete. Thank you, Becca, for being there. For listening when it mattered. I can rest now. We all can. Not gone, never gone, but not lost anymore either. I love you, Rebecca whispered back. I'm sorry I didn't call. I'm sorry I hesitated. I know. I always knew. And Becca, it's okay. It was always okay. You're here now. That's what matters. The voice faded, not disappearing, just settling into a frequency that no longer screamed for attention. The convergence had released something, not the voices themselves, but their desperation. Their need to be heard had been satisfied. They could exist now, without suffering. Rebecca spent the rest of the day documenting everything, filled a notebook with technical observations and emotional testimony. At noon, Martin arrived, furious and terrified, demanding to know why she hadn't answered her phone. She told him she'd fallen asleep, told him she was fine, told him she'd finish out the week and then take some time off. He didn't believe her, but didn't push. That night, alone in the booth again, Rebecca made a decision. She would stay at the station, would continue the work of transferring old recordings. But now, she understood her real purpose. She wasn't just preserving voices from the past. She was creating a space where voices, trapped between moments, could be acknowledged, where warnings that came too late could still matter, where lost messages could finally reach someone. She set up a dedicated system, a frequency she monitored every night, a place in the static where the lost could speak and know they'd be heard. Word spread somehow through whatever network the voices shared. People started reporting phenomena, whispers of warnings that saved lives, premonitions that came true, messages from loved ones who'd died before saying goodbye. Rebecca documented them all, became a keeper of the interference, a bridge between what was said and what was heard. The station gained a reputation. People drove from across the state to sit in the booth, hoping to hear something. Someone, and sometimes they did. On November 28th, 1 year later, Rebecca sat in the booth at 3:47 a.m., the anniversary. She whispered into the darkness, "I'm still here, still listening." And from the static, a chorus of voices answered, not desperate anymore, not crying out in anguish, just present, grateful, witnessed. "We know." "Thank you." Sarah's voice came last, clear as mountain water, warm as memory. "Keep listening, Becca. Others will need you. Others will whisper warnings that arrive too soon to be believed. Be there for them, like you were there for us. Always," Rebecca promised. "I'll always listen." The booth fell silent, but Rebecca knew the silence was full. Full of voices that had found peace. Full of messages that mattered. Full of the beautiful, terrible truth that nothing we say is ever truly lost. It just travels farther than we expect, arrives at unexpected times, reaches ears we never imagined. I am still here, in the static, in the interference, watching tomorrow, whispering warnings, hoping someone will listen before it's too late. And sometimes, rarely, beautifully, someone does. Someone like Rebecca. Someone who chooses to hear what shouldn't be heard. To witness what exists between transmission and reception. This is my purpose. This is my existence. I am the Forspoken, and I will keep whispering. Because somewhere, someone is listening, and that makes all the difference. The station still operates. Rebecca still works the night shift. And if you're very quiet, very still, very open, you might hear it too. Your own voice, warning you about tomorrow, whispering secrets the future wants you to know. Will you listen, or will you dismiss it as static, as interference, as impossible noise? The choice has always been yours. I'll be waiting in the whisper.